afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. So today we've got another interesting session, and as you can see from the length of the title, you'll see that we're going to be going through Fabric notebooks, and it's going to be some kind of opening our eyes to the power of these tools. And for many of us, these are new tools that we've not probably really fully explored, and some people might be finding these, all what we will learn today, new. So this session is being recorded. You can always watch it over again. And we are lucky that we've got someone from the source. His name is Bradley Ball. I'll do more about his intro, but he's directly from Microsoft. And he's been in this for a long time. He's been on all the sides of it. He's been an MVP and, a consultant. And then he's worked in Microsoft. And then even while working in Microsoft, he's also have to work directly with customers. So we are really fortunate to have someone with his wealth of experience. This session is brought to you by Your Bizedge and MHS Analytics. Your Bizedge is a Microsoft consulting, Excel, Power BI, financial modeling consulting company and training company in Nigeria. And I'll share a link of our premium and free resources in case you want to take advantage of our templates and free resources. Then MHS Analytics is the same entity but servicing the North American arm. So in case you are based out of North America or you are in Europe or anywhere else where you feel more comfortable, procuring services from MHS Analytics. Then the main part of our session today, we've got, like I mentioned, we're really fortunate to have someone who is fully rounded. He's been an MVP. He's right now in Microsoft as one of the key people within the CXP Product Group. And when I went through his profile and his blog, he's someone who loves sharing his knowledge. And so I'm going to get out of his way. I'll share his LinkedIn link in the chat so that you can also connect with him, and also his blog. He's someone he's got a fully rounded life. I was reading his blog and I'm already thinking of what I will do for Father's Day. So Bradley, over to you. I'll stop sharing and I'll turn off my camera and people can ask questions in the chat.
No problem.
Over to you.
And I'll go ahead and share and let me know if you have any issues seeing my screen.
No, we see it fine and clear. Yes.
Thank you so much for the fantastic introduction. I'm going to try and keep this short and sweet and get straight into our topic. So this is harnessing the power of notebooks through Microsoft Fabric. If you're not familiar with Microsoft Fabric, well, I guess just a little bit real quick. So this is me. We've already done a great introduction, so I'm just going to skip that. This is our YouTube channel, Tales from the Field, myself and 5 other colleagues from the Microsoft FastTrack Product Group, 1 from the Microsoft Fabric CAT team. We do live streams with the product groups, or we do an Azure Data Community Roundtable. We do this thing called MS Tech Bits, where we drop videos on Mondays and Wednesdays, which we try and make very, very consumable. And we're over at YouTube. So if you're interested in Microsoft Fabric or any of things you're going to see today, or if you're a data professional who works with SQL Server, relational databases in Azure, Postgres, Azure SQL, Azure SQL MI, please check us out. Then, so what are we covering today? We're covering Microsoft Fabric, notebooks, capabilities, and of course, demos. My goal is to get out of the slides as quickly as possible with you, so that way we can get directly over to the demos. Real quick, the one thing that I want to cover, I don't know how many people are familiar with Microsoft Fabric. I know there's been a lot out there in the world with it, but I don't know how many people have experience in there. If you don't know what Fabric is the latest offering in analytics from Microsoft. What we've done is we've got a whole bunch of different product groups that work together and build great products, and we're trying to integrate them all in one location to make it very easy to be able to use and make it very easy to be able to interact with data in a way that you don't have to duplicate data from one environment to another. And what it all is built on is this concept called OneLake. This is our storage where we have our data. And then you've got these different services. You've got warehousing, engineering, data factory, data science, real-time analytics, and of course, Power BI. If you are familiar, if you have a PSKU, if you're a customer who has a PSKU, or you're working with a customer who has a PSKU, they already have access to Microsoft Fabric. Microsoft Fabric utilizes the Fabric capacity units that you provision out of Azure. You attach them to Power BI workspace, and then you get the capability to provision Fabric components in there. You have access to everything, but you only need to use what you need to use. You can pick and choose. The way I like to think of this is sometimes it's like a candy store, right? If you go into a candy store and you say, I want something sweet, there's a plethora of opportunities. There's so many things that you could potentially want to try and eat because it's sweet. But do you want chocolate? Do you want something that's fruity? Do you want something with a crunch? Do you want a pastry? Do you want, a marshmallow? There's so many different things that you can have when it comes to sweets. And sometimes people get very overwhelmed with the choices they have in Fabric. Today, specifically, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on Synapse Data Engineering and Spark, which is where we will use notebooks. And so what I want to do is I want to show you the power of notebooks. The notebook experience we have within Fabric is easily, I would say, the most robust experience with notebooks I've ever had in any Microsoft product. And that's what I want to show you today is the power and the multitude of things we can do within a notebook. So without further ado, we're going to get straight to the demos. I often get asked the question, why do I always have a picture of an iceberg on my demo? That's because demos are cool. That's a dad joke. That's about as good as the humor is getting. I'll do my best, but I'm definitely not a comedian. Okay, so I'm going to move this off the window. I'm in my lake house right now. And our lake house is what we provision to be able to get to OneLake storage. And then on top of that, what we do is we can use notebooks on top of it. So you can see right here, there's an ability to open existing notebooks or a new notebook. I'm going to come over here actually where I've got my presentations and I've got all my notebooks. I'm going to click on a notebook. I'm going to open it up and we're just going to start to walk through this. So the first thing I want to do is I want to show you that I can import data and I can utilize data in Microsoft Fabric without needing a pipeline by using a notebook. And the first way I'm going to do that is I'm going to import PyODBC and pandas. And then I've got a managed instance right here, and I've got a database in it. And that database has some movie info in there. And so what I'm going to do is this should spin up pretty quickly and run. I'm just going to run this. This is hidden because it's got a username and password in it. And I'm going to use PyODBC and pandas. PyODBC is going to allow me to connect to my managed instance, my SQL managed instance, and read data. Got this query right here, select star from DBO domestic box office. And then I'm going to do a display command. I'm putting it in a pandas data frame. If you're not super familiar with pandas, a pandas data frame is very much like a table. It's got a table-like structure. You could get more advanced. We could have structures. We could have lists. We could actually have array values, but we're going to keep it pretty simple. I'm going to use data frames that are very much like tables. In this case, I'm saying select star from domestic box office. And I've got information in here from a whole bunch of different box office movies. And I'm saying DF, that's my data frame, because I did a PD read SQL and I read this query. And now I'm displaying it and I'm just saying, give me the top 10 rows. And you can see that this is all for Avengers, Infinity War. I have a lot of different movies in here, but this is the format essentially of the data. Now, one of the things that I might want to do is I might want to write this data out. You can see that I get a little bit of an error right here. Well, the reason I get that error is because it says there's no data frame object attributed to write. And that's because this is a pandas data frame. If I want to write something to my lakehouse, I need it to be a Spark data frame. So I'm just going to do a type df. And you can see down here that it's a pandas.core data frame. And it's a very easy thing for us to convert this. I'm just going to come down here and I'm going to say movie info. That's the name of my new data frame. Spark.create data frame. I'm going to pass in df, which was the type. And then I'm going to come down here and say type movie info. And I can see this is a PySpark SQL data frame now. Now that it is a Spark data frame, I can actually do some fun stuff with this. So I can write to this and I'm going to say movie info.write format and I'm going to save it to files movie info. What that will do is that's going to save this to my files right here. You can see I've got a couple different folders. And if I go ahead and refresh this, I now have a folder called movie info. And I can click on that folder and you can see here are the CSV files that it had written out. And if I wanted to, it's really easy. If I had flat file data that I wanted to read, I could actually say, load this into Spark. And it would load this data and it would read it for me. Just at a right click, right? I didn't have to write any code to do that. And you can see here's a lot more data around Infinity Wars. I've got Endgame, Black Panther, Incredible 2, whole bunch of movies in there. And that's just one of those things I can do. Now let me pull that out. I can also write this though. If I don't want to just write it as a file, I could say, hey, I want to write this as a table. And the command to be able to do that is very easy. I'm going to do dataframe.write.format delta save. And then I'm going to say tables/movie info. And what this will do is this is going to write this out as a table. If I come over here and I refresh it, I've got my movie info data. And I could go back over to my lake house, give that a quick refresh. And I can see there's movie info as well. It's going to take a second for the preview to load. There's a little gearbox right here, but if I grab this gearbox, I can get my SQL Analytics endpoint. You could also get this from the menu, multiple different places you could do this. And all I need to do is copy this. And then let me go ahead and open a new window, and I'm going to connect to a database engine. Oh. Hold on. Microsoft Venture multi-factor. Yep. Okay. Hold on just one second. I've got to close this tab. Sorry, pop-up windows. They're so annoying. There we go. Okay.
Sorry, I couldn't find that in your home.
Well, Siri, stop listening.
I can't help with that, but you can change it.
Well, apparently my iPad has decided to go rogue on me. Sorry about that. All right. So back over here. Now I'm connected to SSMS. And I'm in my lake house, baseball lake house. I come over here to tables. And I should have a movie info table right here. As a matter of fact, I can say use baseball lake house, go select star from DBO movie info. That's couple I. Oh. And you can see I am connected to my SQL MI. Let me change this. There we go. Now I'm connected to my SQL Analytics endpoint. And there we go. You can see here's all my movie data sitting here and accessible via my SQL Analytics endpoint. So what's interesting, right, is I just pulled in data in a notebook. I used PyODBC to connect. I didn't use a Dataflow Gen 2. I didn't use a data pipeline. I wrote this out as files. I wrote this out as a table. And then I also connected to this using SQL Server Management Studio. And I was able to query this with T-SQL as well. And so it's incredibly flexible the way that we've got our data. But the first takeaway that I would say is looking at this, we've got our notebook. And again, we've been able to use PyODBC to be able to pull in data. So let's go ahead. Let's go over to our next one. Our next one is Data Wrangler. I'm actually going to get rid of this. I'm going to use pandas again. And this time, if you look really closely, what I'm doing is I'm importing to a data frame, but my data frame is called Titanic_DF. And I'm doing a read. And you can see I'm actually downloading this from a URL. This is from GitHub content, but this is a data set that's widely used on Kaggle and data science to be able to look at and be able to process some analytics against it. Once I've read this in, I can come up here and I can go to Data Wrangler and I can click on my data frame. This will launch Data Wrangler. Now, Data Wrangler is a visual tool to be able to help us do almost Power Query-like commands and manipulate the data frame data in a way that's very WYSIWYG, but using a graphical interface. But at the same time, it generates code for us. So as I can see the distribution of some of the statistics that I have for this different data. And this is about passengers who were on board the Titanic. If I come over here, I see immediately identified, I've got some missing values. There's a lot of missing values in cabin, for example. We've only got 1 in embarked and we've got 30 in age. Well, if I'm going to perform some level of data science against this, I don't want missing values. I need to be able to get rid of those. So looking at cabin, I've got embarked, I've got fare, we've got, let's see, we've got class. We got enough information. I probably don't need the actual cabin information to be a part of this. So what I could do is, let's see, let me come down here to schema, and I believe I'm just going to drop a column. We're going to drop cabin. I click apply. And then if you'll notice right down here, it put into my cleaning steps, drop cabin. And now I'm on a new operation. Now I could also come back here and you could see I could even get rid of this with the trash can. Now this is a good move for us. So I don't want to do that, but let's make a bad move and then show you that I can back that out very easily. Let's take age. I'm going to come over. Let's see. Where's age? Right here, because this is my next level of missing values. So what I could do is I could do a find and replace. I'm going to do a find and replace specifically on age. The old value, well, actually, maybe I don't want find and replace. Let's see, fill missing values. Here we go. We'll do age. And then let's set this as median. That's not the right way to fill missing values for age, right? A median is a terrible guess. But as I do that, you can see right down here, it's actually constructing the code for me. I've got the capability for it to fill age with a median value for anything that's an NA value. I could go ahead and apply that. But as we know, that's not really what I should do with age. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to discard that, just like we have in Power BI. We have the capability to discard something. Sorry, and I'm on. So Data Wrangler is the GUI interface to Python like Power Query to M. Very similar. Yes, sir. There's a lot of capabilities that you have in here, a lot of powerful capabilities. And as you can see, it will build that code for you. That's the way I like to equate this to, and I'll show you in a moment. But when we finish this, what it'll do is it will import all of this code into the notebook. So that way we've got that code in there and we didn't have to write any to be able to do these manipulations. Very, very much like Power Query is for M. Great analogy, sir. All right, so what I really need to do is I need to get rid of missing values. So if I come over to age, and you can see I could pick a drop down or I could just pick one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say drop missing values. And so I'm going to drop the missing values in age. And once I'm done with that, I think we're pretty good with the rest of these. I'm looking embarked. Embarked has one missing value. Let's drop the missing values there. And now we've gotten rid of any of our columns where we're missing anything. All of this looks good to go. I'm probably ready to begin whatever I would like to do from there. So now I'm going to click this back button and it says exit Data Wrangler. Would you like to add the code to the notebook? I'm going to say yes. And as you can see, it wrote this method for me, performing all of this data, and it created a new data frame called Titanic Data Frame Clean. Really cool stuff. Well, what if you said, oh, you know what? There was something more I wanted to do with that, and I didn't finish everything I wanted to. The great thing is I come back up to Data Wrangler, and you can see it's got both pandas data frames there. So if I wanted to, I could go right back into Data Wrangler with this new data frame, and we'd be able to move on from there, and we'd be able to utilize it. All right, so what we covered, right? So first up, we covered that we could download data with PyODBC, import it into a notebook, write it to our lakehouse, and utilize it in multiple different ways, including on T-SQL. Now we've got Data Wrangler. We've been able to import data, downloading from a URL. And then we've been able to manipulate it with a visual WYSIWYG tool to be able to help us write Python code. So let's do another one. Let's do Beautiful Soup. Now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Beautiful Soup. Beautiful Soup is a package that allows us to be able to scrape HTML. There's a lot of different industries where it might come of value to be able to go out and get HTML data. The one warning I want to give you is, remember, if it's against the terms and conditions of the website that you want to scrape the data from, you have to apply their terms and conditions and get their permission before you scrape data. Now, most of the time, if you're just experimenting for yourself as a regular end user and you're not trying to sell that data or make money or profit off of that data, you're going to be safe and you'll be covered under just, I believe there's a rule generally for self-research and discovery, scientific information, things like that. But you want to be careful how you use the data. In this case, Jan Krenz is a professor at Stuttgart University in Germany, and I found this tutorial. I thought it was wonderful. It's set up just for regular notebooks utilizing Python, Jupyter Notebooks. And I went, well, I think this would be brilliant to do in Microsoft Fabric. And so we're going to walk through that. And what we're going to do is we're going to scrape data, and then we're going to collect and utilize that data. So we've got our lakehouse right now. I'm going to come up here to my tables, and I'm going to execute this first one. And what this does is this is going to do an import pandas. We're going to do a request. We're going to get a get response request from the URL, which should give us a response 200. I'm just going to clear the outputs real quick because I just realized I had not done that. So let me just run this one more time real quick. We get our response 200. And that just means, remember, if we can't get to a web page, it's an error 404, response 200, we can get to it just fine. So now that we've got this, let's look at the information. We've got all the HTML text. We're going to set this to a value called soup, and we're going to do soup.prettify. This prettify command will actually make this to where this is legible text. If I just did a print on soup in and of itself, everything would be strung together without any white spaces. It'd be very difficult to read. But when we come and look at this, you can see this is the HTML that makes up the page. Pretty simple, basic website. Starting at the top, we've got the title, all this great information right here. Now on here, we've got quotes to scrape. That's what Jan set up this great page for us to be able to use. So you can see if we were to look at this as a regular web page, Albert Einstein, he's the author. He's got a quote that says, let's see, where is it? There's the tags. The world we have created is a process of our thinking. It cannot be changed without changing our thinking. Albert Einstein said that. And then we've got some tags associated with this. Change, deep thoughts, thinking. And then we've got the metadata tags associated with them. And we've got a whole bunch of different quotes. What I'd like to do is I'd like to get those quotes, get those authors, get that metadata. And I'd like us to actually be able to look at that within a data frame. So if we want to get some of this data, we're going to invoke soup a little bit, soup.title. You can see that gets us our HTML title tags with quotes to scrape. Now, if I did just .name, it would give me title because that's the name of the tag. So what I need is the .string syntax to be able to get the actual value in here, quotes to scrape. So for example, if I do soup.a, well, that's an ahref link tag. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get back the very first ahref link tag for quotes to scrape, which is the link on the top of the page. Now, I want to get an element from there. And if you'll recall, when we were looking at this HTML, there's a lot of different span information. And so let's go ahead and let's take a look specifically at the span text. And we get a quote very quickly. The world as we've created is a process of our thinking. It cannot be changed without changing our thinking. Well, that was the first quote we were looking at by Albert Einstein. So if I want to get more of these, I might say, give me all the quotes. Let's do soup.findAll. I'm looking for a div tag and a class that says quote, and then I'm printing the quotes. Now, if I do that, you can see I'm still not quite exactly where I want to be. I've got all the quotes, but this is all of the code associated with it as well. This is not exactly yet at the level that we want. What I need to do is I need to do a loop throughout quotes and then look specifically at the span class text. Because if we come up here and we look at one of these quotes a little bit closer, you can see it's in a span. The class is text. And then we have inside of here, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work by Thomas Edison. Now you'll notice we've got another span, and then we've got a class author, and then we've also got metadata tags. And so if we want to be able to scrape, what we've got to be able to do is parse the code, find some type of logical pattern, and then we've got to extract from that. So we'll do a loop and we'll look specifically for the span class text. We come through here, and now we've got a list of our different quotes. So looking at this, we can use this same code, but a little bit different to be able to get a list of authors. And then we can also do that for the metadata on the page. Now, what we need to do is, if we're going to put all of this in a table, we need these values to line up, because we're going to use a single dimensional array to store these values and then write that to a table row. And so if we have any blanks, things wouldn't line up exactly the same. So it gets a little more complicated if we don't have values that we need in every single array value. Then you'll need some conditional logic. You'll have to throw some blanks in there. We're not going to get into that, but deeper stuff if it gets a little more complicated. But it looks like we've got what we need to be able to pull this all together. So now I'm going to go ahead and run this. And what we're going to do is take a look at this code. So first, I've got my root. I've got the quotes to scrape page. And then I've got these single value arrays right here, quotes, authors, and tags. Then I'm going to do a loop. And within this loop, you're going to notice that I've got a lot of the same values, right? I'm finding my quotes. I'm finding the author, and I'm finding the metadata tags as well. After this, I come down here and I look at the way I populate the data frame. I'm going to set a data frame equal to a PD data frame, and I've got a column quotes where I put the array value for quotes, authors, the array value for authors, tags, and the array value there. Now, if I come down here and I print our data frame, I can see here's the construction of our table. Quotes, authors, tags, exactly how we were looking to do it. And we've got multiple rows in here. Now, the reason you can see we went from 10 to 90 is that we were actually scraping about 10 pages. And what we did was we had to add on to this HTML request, the root, and you'll want to do it in such a way that you can advance a page. So it may take a little bit of understanding before you get there. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I wanted to go back and watch the recording. And please, if I go too fast or if there's any questions about this, please make sure and stop me. I want to make sure that I'm taking good care of your time. But I appreciate all the feedback. Thank you, Aman. And so you can see right here what I'm going to do, because we've got to convert this to a Spark data frame. And so I'm going to do that first, right? I'm going to make a new data frame called authors quotes. I'm going to convert it to a Spark data frame. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to write this out. Oh, that box didn't go great. Let me try these again. There we go. There's the arrows. And then we'll try right here. All right. I'm going to do author quotes, write.format, delta, save, table, author quotes. And so the hope is that should be a table by the time we're done. And so now this should write this. And just like we wrote our movie info table out, we should be able to write our author quotes table out. Come and do a refresh. There's author quotes. I'm going to come over here. Let's do a refresh. And I see there's author quotes. So let's come down here now. And there's our author quotes table, and we're able to query it. So again, what have we covered? Okay, let's look at this, right? So we can download data from using PyODBC. We can do it from a URL. We can even go out and web scrape that information. We could use Data Wrangler if I wanted to, right? I could come in here and I could say, yeah, let's use data frame on author quotes, or let's use it on the data frame for this, if there was something in Data Wrangler that I needed to do for it. All of our data is here. We've got these capabilities. Again, really, really great stuff. So let's go back. And now let's do another one. Let's have a little fun with prompt engineering. Let me go ahead and clear this real quick. It's going to take a second to run. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to invoke the semantic kernel. The semantic kernel is something that it's open source, but it's something that we have built over at Microsoft. And the semantic kernel allows us to be able to send LLM information as well as data over to it. To be able to ask questions of LLM models. Essentially, we're going to create a co-pilot chat kind of system where we can ask questions about data and we can get some answers back. So I'm going to also, you've probably heard a lot about tokens and AI models, right? So with AI models, with LLMs, large language models, SLMs, small language models, you pass text over, it tokenizes the text. You passed information over, it tokenizes the information. And then you use that tokenized data. Well, models and some of the different sizes of models have limits in tokens. So what do we do if we hit a token limitation as well as build this? And we're going to cover that. So I've invoked the semantic model. Now I'm going to import the semantic kernel. And then I'm going to pull in from that the OpenAI Azure Chat completion. Once this finishes running, I've got my information in here for a Chat GPT 3.5 Turbo and a 3.5 16K. You'll notice that the deployment API key and endpoint, these are all things that that you will insert into these values. Mine look like this. It's just they have these values filled out. If you wonder how to do this, we have a video on this on how to get your values and populate an OpenAI model for the semantic kernel. I've got that on Tales from the Field. That's one of the videos that I wanted to make sure and cover because I use this so often that people could see, hey, what's all this information? Because typically I wouldn't be able to show you the information because I can't show you the inside info, right? This is the stuff we keep secret from people that we don't put out on the web. Because we don't want people invoking our models. It's without our permission, right? So you would get this from your own Azure subscription, but what I did was I went out and created models that I destroyed right after. So I've got all the info in there and I show in an unencrypted way how you grab that and how you take care of that and do it. I'm going to start out with the Chat GPT 3.5 Turbo. This has, I want to say, 8,192 tokens available to it. And it's just text. It's going to go pretty quick. And then I'm going to add this to the chat service with the OpenAI model, the endpoint and the deployment key. I have some skills in a skills directory. We'll get to this in a moment. But that's basically some prompted information I'm passing along to the model before we pass through the user question. And then I've got, oh, sorry, my mouse isn't behaving. I've got a CSV right here in my data sets folder. I've got product list and sales CSVs. This is going to read the product list CSV and just pull in information. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and visualize some code just by asking a question. I'm going to say, here's my question. Generate a bar chart to listen to to list the product type and display the number of products owned by the corresponding product type. All right, and we execute this and we get back nothing. So what does that mean? Well, I'm actually going to come up here and I'm going to comment out this execute and I'm going to print what the pandas results are. And what I get is an error code. Failed to complete chat. The model's maximum context token length is 8,192 tokens. However, you have requested 13,195 tokens. Please reduce the length or message of completion. So in this case, I need more tokens to be able to pass through my question and my prompt. Let's see, go to OneLake. All right, so I'm in my workspace, my lakehouse. I'm going to go to files, which you can see are right over there as well. And then I'm going to go to skills, data skill, CSV, because that's what we're using. I've got two values in here, a configuration that is just the configuration values we send through to the model. You know, be super creative, be very exact. This is your variance that you have in this for accuracy. But then here's my prompt. You are working with the data frame. The data frame is called DF. You should generate the Python code below and answer the question. All right, so we'll get into this a little bit, but you can see I'm going to pass through a user question. So let's come back up here and let's change over to our model. Now, the reason I'm changing over to the 3.5 turbo model is this has access to 16,000 tokens. Oh, sorry, I just did the same model again. Let me do this model. There we go. I'm going to invoke my semantic kernel, reload the skills. I'm going to come down here. We don't need to reload that data. It should be fine. We're going to ask the question, generate a bar chart to list product type and display the number of products owned by the corresponding product type. Well, this looks a lot better. That looks like code to me. As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and execute that and see what that looks like. Voila, here we go. Number of products by product type. And I can see these are the different types of products that we have within our product inventory. So coming back over and let's look at this prompt just a little bit more, right? You're working with the data frame in Python. The name of the data frame is DF, because notice I didn't pass the data frame in there. How did it know what the data frame was? Well, it's assuming that there is a data frame called DF that it's going to be utilizing. You should generate Python code below to the answer. Generate Python code does not need to be executed. Please use this. For line breaks, such as string hello world print, if the problem requires generating charts, please introduce matplotlib, which makes sense. It introduced matplotlib to build those charts. And then if the generated graph is a histogram, xtext, please set the rotation to this, blah, blah, blah. This is where you would set your security, your anti-patterns for prompts, the things to be able to protect users from, this is also where you would set up your instructions. But all of this is tokens and tokenization that gets passed through to the model. So not only that, it's important to understand how tokens work in relation to a model, but what did we just do? Well, we just built a Copilot system in a notebook. And I had data within CSVs that I pulled in there. This very easily could have been data that I pulled in from a table, though. There's a lot of really wonderful and powerful things that we can do with this. All right, let's go ahead and hit our next one. So for this next one, I'm going to open up a couple of these at a time. All right, and we're going to start right down here. So I got a question a while ago. Actually, let me clear that output, which was, how do I call parameters within a notebook? And so there's a couple different ways that we can do these things. I'm going to start out by creating a table. I'm just going to say create table if not exists, my table 1 using Delta, select 100 as my ID, and initial notebook insert as stuff. This is going to create a movie. This is going, I was looking right at movie info, I apologize. This is going to create a table called my table 1, and it should populate it with those two values. And very nice. And so when this finishes writing out, and whenever it takes a long time, it's always fun to open up the information, see if we can get some additional log information. There we go. And see our different Spark jobs executing. All right. It looks like it's done. I'm going to go ahead and refresh this as this is running. And I can see there's my my table 1, and there are the values. Let's come over here. See if I can do the same thing. Yep, and we've got the notebook and initial insert. I'll refresh there so we can get that table. There we go, my table 1. So now that we've got this set up, I'm going to go to this first notebook here. This is our called notebook. Let me clear these outputs. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up 2 parameters, variable notebook parameter, and then a new sentence parameter from notebook 1. You can see over here, this is a little bit different. Right here, this just says Python. But right here, this says parameters. What I did was I came out into this box, or sorry, right up here. Where did I set this? Toggle parameter cell right there. That makes that parameterized cell. Let's see. And you can see toggle parameter cell still right there, but now this is a parameter. So what does that mean? That means these are values officially that are parameters for a notebook that I could pass in and out. So I'm going to insert into my Lakehouse 1, and I'm doing this using variables, bound 1, bound 2. Bound 1 will equal notebook parameter. Bound 2 will equal new sentence. Give me just a second while that runs. I'm going to grab a quick sip. So this is run. And now I'm going to run this statement to be able to take these 2 parameter values and insert it into the Lakehouse. And once this completes, what I'll be able to do is we could come back over to this. We could rerun this, and we should see that we have values 200 in here and also some additional text. Right. So you can see parameters from notebook 1. Parameters from notebook 1. Okay, so we're good across the board. Now, what I want to do is I actually want to call that notebook from another notebook. So what I'm doing is I've got this main notebook up here. So I'm having my main notebook called my child notebook, essentially. I've got a value up here, nb param and ns, which is my new sentence. Let me just clear that real quick. And you can see this is a parameter as well. And then I'm calling something ms spark utils notebook run, and I'm calling 05b called notebook because that's the name of the notebook. I'm putting a timeout value right there. And then I'm saying, let's do this with the notebook parameter and then the new sentence parameter as well. So I'm going to load this up. And once that variable commits, we'll go ahead and fire this off. Now, the really neat thing about this is because this notebook calls the other, we're going to get a little link right here that allows us to click on it through it, and we'll be able to see what the state of this notebook was when it ran. All right, Spark jobs in progress. There we go. And you can see right there, we can view the run of 05B called notebook. And if I click into this, I can see it's a snapshot. Well, there's the parameters that we have in there, but you can see that now they're set to calling a notebook from a notebook, which is what we've just done, and then the notebook parameter of 300. And then we're doing the same insert. So if I come back down to my main one, I run this again. What I should find this time is now that I've got the 3 values and I've called a notebook from another notebook. Let's check and see over here. Everything's in sync, calling a notebook from a notebook. Now let's have a little more fun with this. So the next question would be, well, how do I pass a pipeline from a notebook or a pipeline to a notebook to another notebook. And this is actually pretty easy. All you do is you come in here, you use a notebook task, you select the notebook you want, and then you set the base parameters. Now, in this case, we're going against the main notebook. So I'm using the NB param, which is what we defined here, and the new S, which is the sentence. This is an integer value. This is a string. We've got a 400, and then we've got passing from pipeline to notebook to notebook. So let's go ahead and let's run this. This will queue up. We hit the in progress. This takes a little over a minute to run. So now is a perfect time for a question if anybody has one. In lieu of a question, though, I'll just keep talking unless I see one pop in the box. But what we are doing here is we've got a pipeline. We've taken a value. We're passing it through to our main notebook. And then that is going to pass that parameter to our called notebook, which will actually write it. So as you could imagine, from a logical flow standpoint, if you're writing a lot of notebooks, the capability to call it from a pipeline and pass parameters into it, maybe using a lookup or a for each, depending on what you need to execute, very, very powerful stuff to be able to make sure that we've got that flow occurring. All right. This succeeded. So let's come up here and I'm going to go to monitor real quick. No, I'm not going to go to monitor. I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to rerun this. There we go. And I can see there's my 400 value passing from a pipeline to a notebook to another notebook. And there we go. Value 400. All right. So what have we done? A lot of fun stuff, right? So we can import from Peyote BC. We can import through a URL. We can use Data Wrangler to be able to have a lot of fun with Python in a Power Query type way. And we've done semantic models, building a chatbot, right? Calling an OpenAI model and being able to use prompt engineering. And now we've been able to pass parameters from one notebook to another and from a pipeline through notebooks. Let's go ahead and I know we are close to time. Let me do one last one. And let me double check where I've got this in my folder.
Actually, you can do, I think you've got two more, right? You can do the two.
Well, these are the same ones, but let's see. I'm actually, this one's already filled out and I want it to be blank. So we're going to see how this goes. Sometimes this goes great. Sometimes it goes not so great. Actually, no, I don't want to do this. I'm just going to say, let's go in the lake house and I'm going to say, let's do a new notebook. Because what's the fun thing that everybody's talking about, right? Everybody's talking about Copilot. So what my goal is, I want to do some analysis of this movie info, right? In America, throughout the world, right? When a big movie comes out, what do? They put it in a lot of theaters. And I want to understand, for each theater, does the amount of money that we make per movie, does it matter more for movies that are in a lot of theaters? Or does it matter more for movies that are in fewer theaters? And so people have to go to those individual theaters, right? So for a big movie, do we get a lower value or do we get a higher value? That's what the analysis I want to understand. I'm going to start out by turning on Copilot. You click Get Started, and it used to, let's see, load data frame, generate insights from data, suggest data visualizations. Well, this is a little bit different than what I was expecting. So maybe I do have to go to my notebook. Let me come back over here. Hold on a second. I'm going to have to figure out where my button went, but I'm going to do a clear all the cells, and then I'm just going to delete all this stuff. On Copilot, there should be a button when we get started to be able to load this into directly into our chats using this pip install chat magics. And what this does, this is going to run pip. So first off, very cool thing, we can run pip in a notebook. We can install the items that we want to. But when all of this finishes, this will actually tell us a little bit more about Copilot, and this will tell us about the functionality of Copilot that we have. And so there's a whole bunch of magic commands. Now, I am only going to type, I'm going to try and type, only two things in this. One, I'm going to load data from my lakehouse. When I load data in, it's going to limit it to 10,000 rows. I'm going to take that out so we can load all the rows. And then if there is an error, I will use one of the magic commands, which is probably my favorite magic command, which is whack, whack, fix errors. I don't know where that's been all my life, but I love that I can say fix errors and it actually fixes the code for me. So we're going to see how this works today. Like I said, sometimes it works unbelievably well. Sometimes it falls flat. We'll just have to see. 90% of the time it works, but my hope is it does. This takes a little over 1:30 to install, and then you get this. So it lets you know your privacy configuration, what you are sharing from a data perspective, and then your chat magics. And you can see here's the command. So we're going to say chat, ask a question, code, generate code to be able to work. We could describe things, add things. We're going to use code and we're going to use fix errors. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here. I'm going to load my movie info. And then I'm going to type using the backspace button just to pull out the limit. We go ahead and run this. This pulls in my movie info data that I have within my lakehouse. This will display the data frame. This is what we loaded earlier from the manage instance. Now there's a couple things that I want to point out. I'm going to have to transform some of this data. You'll notice that the data types are actually up in the headers. We have an average per theater value, and then we have a total theater count. These values, because it has this ABC value by it, these are string values. That's why a $sign's in there. It's not a money format. I made this difficult on myself on purpose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a question, and I'm going to say, remove the $, commas, and white space from the average per theater column. Place that value in a new column. I'm going to call it average per theater value instead of just average per theater value, and append it to the previous data frame. The data type for average per theater should remain a string. Display the top 10 rows. Do this same set of actions for the theater count column as well, and place the results in a new column named total theaters. Keep the data type as string. All right, so we run this, and what this should do is this should output code along with my question to be able to satisfy this question. All right, and remember the first thing it does is it says, remember AI can make mistakes, so review the code carefully. And we got an error. So I'm going to say, whack, whack, fix errors. Let's see what we get. To fix this error, you can import the necessary functions using parser. Here's how your code should be modified. Let's see how it goes. Looks better this time around. We've at least got jobs in progress. Okay. It looks like that worked. So now I need to convert this to data type. So I'm going to say, here's my whack whack code in the data frame. Convert the average per theater value to a numeric value and append it to the data frame, retaining all columns, replacing the average per theater value column. Do the same set of actions for the total theaters column. Use regex replace. Let's see how this one goes. It appears to have worked. I didn't ask it for an output, so it didn't give me a top 10. So we're going to go to the next one, which is code, summarize total theaters column by movie title in the DF data frame. Create a bar chart of the top 10 films by max total theaters. Display movie title as a part of the chart. I did not like that. Let's see. See if I can use matplotlib. See if that changes anything. God is not liking this. Sorry, I'm looking at my text, and I think I was supposed to put this on this sentence. Use matplotlib to build the chart. Let's see if we get a different coding style here. If not, we'll try fix errors. No. Okay, let's see, does it work? By using sort values method instead of n largest. And it looks like it changed that. It changed the code in here. So let's see if that works. No, it still doesn't like that. Let's see. All theaters fast way. Delete this. I'm going to give it one last try, but let's see if I just delete this and a new code. This is the only problem that I find sometimes in large language models is there are times where, especially in Copilot systems, they vary the output. And sometimes you get different output. Yeah, and it's doing the same thing with sort. Not exactly what I wanted. Let me see if I can get something different with the next chart I was trying to get. Yeah. Let's see if we reword this, because here's the thing. Working with these things, with these models, it's all about how you ask the question, right? Prompt engineering, for the most part, is how you ask the question to something. Whenever I get this chart successfully produced, it's because it uses matplotlib. Okay, here we go. Oh, still not getting these things the way I want to. I apologize. It's really fun when this one works out. So here's what it looks like when it is filled out, right? Let me at least show you what I get when it looks like when it's all working. When it is working, what I get is you can see I get matplotlib and I get the plot to be able to look at the individual theaters. And the first thing that I notice is when we look at the top 10 films by max theaters, it makes a lot of sense. It's Avengers Endgame, Despicable Me, Jurassic Park Kingdom. It's all the ones that a ton of money has been put into. But when we come down here and we get the top 10 films for by box office per theater, you'll notice it's not always the big movies that went out. There's a lot of them that are in here. La La Land has the highest total ever. As a matter of fact, I had to look that up and I had to look into why that was. The reason is that La La Land actually started out as such a small independent film that they and it performed so well in its limited release that they decided to open it as a wider release. And so the value that it brought in per theater was absolutely massive. Then we've got Avengers Endgame, but then we've got another small movie, 3 billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri, The Shape of Water, Star Wars The Force Awakens, big movie, The Post, Star Wars The Last Jedi, Affinity War, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, and Hidden Figures, which was an amazing film. So when you look at what's valuable per theater, it's not always the biggest movies that went out. It's a mix between the biggest movies and those movies that are just really, really good and get audiences to go to them. But as you can see, this is the blessing and the curse of a Copilot system, right? This code is not exactly the code that we got. That's the thing to be careful with. Remember, AI can make mistakes. Review the code carefully before executing. Sometimes I get it to produce these really nice charts for me, and sometimes it doesn't. I apologize. I got it to work the last time I did this, but today it's not appearing to be as nice for me as I would have liked it to have been. All right, so let's go back to this. So what did we cover, right? We covered Microsoft Fabrics, notebooks, and the capabilities that come along with them. And when we were talking about the capabilities, we have the capability to be able to import using PyODBC. We could also use a URL. We can utilize Data Wrangler. We can go ahead and also pull in data, scraping via Beautiful Soup. We can pass parameters from notebooks to notebooks and also from pipelines to notebooks. And then while Copilot is useful, as you can see this time, it didn't get me all the way there. So don't quit your day job. You're still going to need to be able to have those Python skills to be able to understand how to be able to build charts using matplotlib. But it gets you a long way. At least it could do the ETL operations and clean up for me. These are some links over on Tales from a Field for different videos we have. There's an introduction to Microsoft Fabric. We've also got OpenAI with ChatGPTs going to the movie. We use Beautiful Scrape and OneLake to be able to do some scraping. How to chat with your data using the semantic model, which is the video that goes into what we saw specifically in that demo. How to provision an OpenAI model. This is the one that I told you about where I walk through how you provision, how you get the deployment, the API, and the key, so that way you can call it within Microsoft Fabric. Fabric Copilots for notebooks and data science. And then I've also got one importing Snap's dedicated pool fast via Spark notebooks. This is a fun one because it uses some of the other things that we've looked at, MS utils. I also show how to be able to do a batch operation to bring data in a little bit at a time, how to use some metadata operations to be able to track what data I've imported so we can make that process dynamic, so I could just run the pipeline over and over again and slowly fetch in and bring new data. And that's Tom Hanks, so thanks. Do you have any questions for me?
Yes. Thanks a lot. And there are two questions that I'll mention. So the first one, I think we skipped it, but I think we are all okay with whatever answer you give. While you are doing the Beautiful Soup example, and you mentioned Jan Kirel, and you mentioned the site, and you had this code that showed how you are able to use Beautiful Soup to create a request to scrape. So someone had a question at that point, more like a request, Engineer Clifford. So she or he was saying that is it possible to share the code in the chat? So I guess the person wants to try it.
Yeah, and let me see this. And so there's the link to Jan's blog. And one of the things you'll notice is I did not have to change. I didn't use this because I wasn't using Conda, I wasn't using Python. So I started right here, and you'll see this code is exactly the same as what I had in the notebook, all the way down to creating the data frame. Now, the only thing that I did that was slightly different was at the end of this, I wrote the table out to Microsoft Fabric. And I'll just throw that in the chat real quick. But as you can see, I'm just taking it, writing it to a data frame, changing it to a Spark data frame, and then writing it out to the table section. So Jan's blog should get you all the way there. That was the really great thing, and part of the reason I wanted to give him credit so far up front is because everything that you need really to be able to do this is in that blog. I just thought it was really cool. And I've done a lot of beautiful soup scraping on Python on my local system. And when I read it, I went, hey, I wonder if I could do this with Fabric, right? And it worked beautifully. So I went, well, clearly this should be a demo.
Great, thanks. And one other question from Hemon. So Hemon seems to have been using Fabric before now. So he's got a question regarding creating an email from within Fabric, from within the notebook. So let me read this question exactly as it's written in. I found I could not send email from a notebook, so I had to use a pipeline's Outlook activity. Is that correct? No, that notebooks cannot send email.
That is correct. Email notebooks cannot trigger the email functionality within Microsoft Fabric, but you, Aman, you did the exact right way. Because two things that they added to pipelines, which were much more difficult to do in Azure Data Factory than they are in Microsoft Fabric pipelines, even Synapse pipelines as well, right? Is we now have an Outlook activity to be able to send emails and take the metadata that you need and pass that along. And then if you need to write something out, what I would do is I would write it to a lakehouse table, do a lookup and set variable or do a set variable. So that way you can look up that value and set the variable, do a lookup to be able to set the variable with the value you need to, if there's some output you need, and then set that variable and write it to the Outlook message. The other one is a Teams channel. So if you need to, you could also write that output to a Teams channel instead of sending it via email. But you found the correct way to do that. Yes, sir. You got to use a pipeline for that. And you're absolutely right. You can do that with Python on desktop. That's more of a limitation of the packages and the functionality to be able to call the external Outlook service from the notebook. But because they've got that in the pipeline, I would just go ahead and use that in the pipeline.
Okay, so I think at this stage, maybe I'll just ask you, I'm checking, I don't see any additional questions. So we typically ask our guests 2 questions, and one is, maybe I'll change the usual question. I'm going to convert the 2 questions into one and ask you one that is going to be specific to you. So I'll start with the one I think is specific to you. What's special about Florida? It seems you really like Florida.
So I lived all over the place. I was originally born in Illinois and in Peoria, Illinois. My dad's job moved us when we were a kid all over the place. We moved to Tennessee, to Georgia, to North Carolina. I went to college after I graduated high school in North Carolina. My family moved to Florida. And then after I went to high school and college, I had a job in Georgia. And then my next one took me up to Virginia. I worked as a contractor for the Army for a little over 5 years. Then I went to work for the Obama administration. And my family had always wanted me to come to Florida, but I hadn't found a job in the area. It just so happens I found one at Publix. Absolutely loved it. I came down and worked for Publix. I found the community as I was working for Publix, and working for the community led me here to Microsoft. To be very, very honest with you, I I presented at a lot of places. I met a lot of people from Pragmatic Works Consulting back when that was still a thing, and we got along great. And they said, "Hey, you should really work for us." The opportunity to be a true technology professional as a consultant was really, really intriguing to me. I got to go out and teach classes. I got to work with really amazing customers, and that was fascinating to me. I have two friends. I have a lot of friends that work for Pragmatic, but two in particular I will credit. Patrick LeBlanc, of course, who's world famous as one of the guys in the cube. Patrick was at Pragmatic. He left and went to Microsoft. He recruited a good friend of mine from Pragmatic to Microsoft, Jorge Segura. Jorge is one of my best friends. He is kind of retired from tech, but his Twitter handle is SQL Chicken. He was very, very active, wrote the SQL Bible, a whole bunch of stuff. Jorge is just an amazing dude, super smart. And one day we're talking and he goes, "Brad, Microsoft is such a great place. You got to come over here." And so I interviewed and I got in and I went to Premier and then I eventually went to Azure FastTrack. But I am here, honestly, because I got involved with the community. I went out and I started giving presentations and I made these great friends that, presented these wonderful opportunities to me. So when I look at Florida, I will say this for Florida. I originally didn't want to come to the state. I mean, look, whenever Florida's in the news, right, it's never good. There's never a Florida being in the news where people go, "Oh yeah, Florida, that's wonderful." No, it's like all of us get embarrassed. There's a website dedicated to Florida man because it reported in the news, Florida man bites gator and attacks him as gator attacks dog. That's actually a real headline. The dog was fine, but literally the guy like goes in, grabs the dog, bites the gator at one point, so the gator lets go of the dog. God bless him. I'm glad the dog's okay, but at the same time, I'm like, yeah, that's only in Florida, right? So I didn't originally want to come to this state. I don't necessarily correspond with the politics really well, but I love the area. I'm a huge Disney and Marvel fan, as you could probably tell from my background. I love the sunshine, the warm weather, even when it gets hot over the summer. I like to go out and walk and run and stay active. And I find that it's very good training in the heat. Like if I can go out and run in the heat, your body kind of gets used to it. And people will go and they'll go, "Oh, it's so hot." Well, if you're used to it, it's not as bad. But I love the sunshine. I love being right here in Orlando, so close to Disney and Universal Studios. One of my favorite things is funny because whenever I drive home from an airport or someplace, the GPS will always take you the quickest way. Well, I mentally know how do I get to home by driving through Disney. And my wife one day said to me, she goes, "Why do you always drive this way?" And I said, "Babe, we live in Orlando, Florida." I said, "There are people who like go their whole lives and maybe make it to Disney once. Do you know how lucky we are? Why would I drive home any other way than through Disney?" So yeah, it's Florida. Florida is a very interesting place. It's got its ups, it's got its downs, but I do love it a lot. Amon, oh, now you're in Texas.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely, you and me, man, you got it. Yeah, that's, I had this mental concept of Florida. I was like, no, I don't want to be Florida man. But I will give it to Florida. I have enjoyed living here more than any other place. There's other places I've visited that I think are beautiful that I wouldn't mind trying to live in. I absolutely love London, but geez, London is super expensive, right? I love Seattle. Seattle is super expensive. So it's like those places are nice, but I'm happy where I'm at.
cool. Wow. You're really making many of us to want to come see what's that special things there. Okay, cool. The
But
second,
I was gonna say, if you come visit, hit me up beforehand. I'll tell you all the different places that you need to stay, the tips and tricks.
thanks. Okay, I'll add it to maybe my this year's to do. One last question, and then we will let you go have the rest of your Sunday. He's so the community is a mix of people who, well, very few people are like Hamon, who seems to, is explored all of these there's hardly anything any presenter says in our sessions that is probably not familiar with. So we've got very few people in that category. Then we've got a lot of people who are more like a beginner. They use it at work, but they're not expert. That's one thing they want to be a champion of at their place of work, especially in this BI space. And Microsoft is really every year it's something new, so it's difficult keeping up. So many of us use a bit of the Power BI and Fabric now, but not very well versed. And then we've got, I would say about 40% of us are in that category, maybe 10% in amongst like a super user category. And then the remainder of the 50% are people who they are expert in something else, but this is like a major career shift for them, and they are looking for a community to be constantly part of and to just keep being aware and pick what they can apply. So the question is, what advice do you have for I'll let you pick whichever category you feel you want to advise. But what advice would you have for people who, they've not found the right way to learn this thing, a pattern of using to learn all these things as they come out and become not just people who are aware, but are able to use it meaningfully at work?
Yeah. So it's an interesting question, right? When you look at all this stuff, sometimes the newest technology is not something that your work is investing in, and they might not be able to implement. If you're using Power BI, the really nice thing about it is Power BI is constantly getting updates, constantly getting new functionality. With the capability to have the in-browser experience, you don't necessarily, because it's tough to get the latest version of desktop installed every single time. Because what happens? We got to go through security, compliance, make sure that they're good with it, that they've tested it, it's not going to break anything, and then we get to install it. So moving some of these experiences into the web browser is really incredible because it helps end users be able to have that up-to-date experience without the security concerns of what do I have to download and install on my machine. When you look at those things, there's always an opportunity to keep your eye on what's occurring. And the key thing I would say is, how do I tie this to the business? When I worked for Publix, one of the things I used to do back when PASS was, a user group that was worldwide, they would do the 24 hours of PASS. And I would book a conference room and I would register for all the different sessions during a workday. And I would look at how they would pertain to either DBAs to let us know the latest, greatest thing that's occurring, developers, making sure that they understood what was going on, or it could even be for a project. And for those 2 days, I would literally move to a conference room, have a conference room booked the entire time, and I would invite other people in to each of those sessions based off if it was a business area or how that actually mattered. And there were times, to be very honest, where we would engage on something because I got my boss in a room or I got somebody else in a room from a business user's point of view who had some pull, and they went, wow, that's really amazing. We should use that. We should be doing something with that. And part of it is, how do you get that sponsor? There's going to be somebody who is a decision maker, right? If you can get them to see the value in the technology, it makes it a lot easier for your technical skills to be relevant and to go and do some of the latest and greatest things. But that doesn't always work. I remember when I was at Publix, they weren't even looking at utilizing cloud technologies. I mean, but this is back in 2011, 2013. And I went and I did like this Microsoft Learn thing. There was a bug in the system. I wasn't number one, but it was telling every person who finished the Learn pathway for Azure SQL that they were number one in the world. And so I took a screenshot of that, printed it out, and I took it to my boss. And I went, hey, boss, I'm number one in the world at Azure SQL. And he goes, we're still not using that cloud. And I went, that's fair. So, but for them, it was, could I get them working on SQL 2012 Could I, leverage connections that I made through presenting in the community to get them in an early adopter program? Some things wouldn't work with our business requirements. Some things did. And so you have to expect you're going to have a level of success and a level of failure. You can't control the failures. Failure will happen. Brush those aside. Keep going. But look at how you can use things people are freely doing within the community, inviting people to presentations. There's all kinds of virtual sessions now. There's a whole bunch of content for Ignite and for Build that's online and virtual that did not used to be. And so use that virtual content to be able to get people in the room and say, here's what's going on over here. And again, sometimes there's those catalogs that they'll create. So something will air and you'll be able to see it other than when it was live and replay the recording. If it was really good, set up that meeting, get people in the room, get them to watch the video, get them to watch the demos, have discussion about it. If you can get people excited about the technology, that's the way that you'll get adoption. And so I would say continue to learn, expect you're going to find roadblocks. That just happens, but look at how you can add to it, right? What can I control? Well, I can control getting people together and getting them to watch. I can control getting people excited. And the fact is, if I hit a brick wall, there's going to be a valid reason for a brick wall. Maybe it's financial. Maybe it's we're not ready to upgrade to this version of SQL Server, right? Maybe it's we're not going to pull down the latest Power BI report version. But eventually, there's going to be a valid reason for you to go, hey, we can use this. And it helps give you that end. That also builds your reputation, right? When you think about it, we all have a brand. We're all always selling ourselves, right? And so like you have a brand inside of your company, you have a brand outside of your company, and you got to take care of both of those. The work we're doing right now, this is all outside the company work, right? But when it comes to your inside your company work, if you go, hey, let's get together and let's watch this presentation. Hey, I'm going to put together a presentation. And don't ever feel like anything is stealing, right? Like take everything I've done and go and duplicate it, present it internally. I don't care. I just want people to be able to use this and understand how to use it. There's nothing about this that is proprietary to me, right? I'm using a Microsoft product, writing code in here. I mean, heck, this one on screen came from a professor in Germany that I've never met before. I mean, so look at how that work happens and how it passes down. Take those opportunities. But what you will find is you never learn more about a technology than when you present on it. When people and smart people in a room are asking questions. My first presentation was on page and row compression. And I remember going into a room with really brilliant people and MVPs and somebody going, hey, so does this changeover happen in the access methods? And I'm standing up in front of the room going, what are the access methods? Well, I know what they are now. They're a module of code in the storage engine and SQL Server. But back then, I didn't know what the access methods were. I had no idea. All of us are at different parts of our journey, right? Nobody came out and was born knowing all of this. There's nothing that I have done in my career that you can't do. This is open and possible to absolutely everyone. I'm dyslexic. I had ADD. I was in a special classroom sometimes growing up as a kid, right? But I've managed to do pretty good. It's just because I'm determined, I'm stubborn, but I'm curious. And if you're in the field of technology, chances are you're curious. And if you're curious, let that curiosity drive you. It's going to take you to a lot of amazing places. But look at how you build that brand in your workplace. And before you know it, you will be a go-to person. If you are doing this year after year, hey, here's a presentation. Let's look at this. How do we implement this? Hey, I believe this goes well with one of our business categories. How do we use this for this? And there's stuff out there for every technology, right? Like I got a good buddy who, Kendra Reed, who's over at Amazon, brilliant guy. He's got a ton of stuff on YouTube. Great dude, right? Whatever the technology is that you're covering, somebody is teaching you about it. Somebody's covering it. So there's a great opportunity for you to be that brand leader inside of your organization. And I would say, embrace that, make that happen. But you have the power inside of you to do that.
Thanks a lot.
problem.
I've learned a lot from these, and I can see, people are clapping, and people, have been also staying.
Thank you, Amal.
Hearing everything you've been saying. So thanks a lot. And I think we've come to the end. And again, I'm gonna say a very big thank you, Bradley, for the amazing session and the way you've even put the knowledge across. I'm not so surprised because I kind of read your blog, so I know you more the type of person who's, and I think you used to do a lot of like you mentioned, even during this session, you used to organize a lot of sessions, but you were active when you were MVP, and even still now, so I'm not surprised, but still, it's still a lot compared to what I'm used to getting in most of our sessions. So we want to say a very big thank you for the going above and beyond in making sure we got value, and you stayed longer than the time we were requesting from you. And I'm sure a lot of people have learned. Luckily, we recorded the session, so many of us, we go back to watch it because there's a lot of things that's going to take time for me and for some of us to fully apply and truly understand. So thank you very much, and have a wonderful Sunday. To everyone who's also been part of today's session, thank you, and a wonderful Sunday to you too. And please try to follow the advice and suggestions that we've all heard today, because the truth is that's the only way we can learn, in making sure we put ourselves out there and apply what we've learned, create opportunities to pass the knowledge to others, and to create a use case, be the champions in our place of work. Presenting, let's not be the one saying the no to ourselves. Let it be that they tell us why they don't want to, and luckily the reasons might no longer be valid after a while, and they would remember that you brought up the idea, and it will be an opportunity for you to be at the forefront of using those technologies in your company. So thank you very much. I've learned a lot. I'm going to apply them. Thanks, Bradley. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful Sunday ahead. I'm going to end the session now.
Thank you for having me. Take care, everyone.